There are those who believe they can outwit the very hands of fate, that destiny is a pliable thing to be molded and bent to their will. Yet their fear of a predetermined outcome can become the very force that drives them towards it. Upon the vast plains of Thebes, a shadow fell, not the shadow of war, nor the creeping tendrils of plague, but a darkness woven of prophecy and twisted fate. Oedipus, so the seers foretold, was a creature of doom, his mere presence a curse upon the earth. King Laius, his brow etched with lines of worry, sat upon his throne, a stark contrast to the vibrant tapestries adorning the hall. Beside him sat Queen Jocasta, her beauty undimmed by the years, yet a hollowness lurked in her eyes. Theirs was a love story woven with silk and sorrow, for though their bond was strong, a single agonizing thread remained unfulfilled. They were childless. Year after year, they had beseeched the gods for an heir, offering prayers and sacrifices at every altar. Yet the heavens remained silent. Laius, burdened by the weight of a potentially barren lineage, felt the kingdom's future teeter on a precipice. It was in the midst of this quiet desperation that a prophecy, chilling and stark, echoed through the halls of Thebes. The oracle's pronouncement hung in the air, a death knell cloaked in the guise of promised joy. A son would be born to the royal house, yet this child would be their undoing. He was fated to slay his father and wed his mother. A tremor ran through Laius, pride warring with terror within him. This was not a legacy to embrace, but a monstrous curse to be defied. Jocasta paled, a hand fluttering to her still flat belly, as if sensing the tainted life that might stir within. "We shall forge our own destiny," Laius declared, his voice strained but resolute. "No god shall dictate such a heinous fate upon us." Yet even as he spoke, doubt festered within him. Were they truly greater than the whims of the divine? Could a mortal king outmaneuver the intricate tapestry of fate? The birth of Oedipus was a muted affair. No heralds announced his arrival. No jubilant feasts marked the occasion. Instead, his infant form was whisked away in the dead of night by a trusted servant, a grim determination in the king's eyes as he handed over his own flesh and blood. The orders were clear and chillingly simple. Laius wanted the child dead. His order was to abandon his son on the slopes of Mount Cithaeron and leave him to the mercies of wild beasts and the relentless elements. Unbeknownst to Laius and Jocasta, fate was a master weaver, its threads unseen but unbreakable. The servant, though bound by duty, was not devoid of compassion. The babe's cries pierced the stillness of the night, and a flicker of pity stirred in his calloused heart. He could not bring himself to leave the infant to certain death, yet defying the king was its own terrible risk. Thus, with a silent prayer tucked into his tunic, the servant carried out his grim task. He pierced the child's tiny ankles, threading a rough cord through them. He then made his way towards a familiar grazing path, a place frequented by the shepherds of the region. With a heavy heart, he hung the babe from a prominent tree. With a furtive glance over his shoulder, a silent plea for forgiveness, he turned and fled, leaving the child to the whims of chance and the hungry gaze of the mountain itself. Fortune, fickle as ever, took note of the abandoned child. A shepherd from Corinth was drawn by the pitiful wails. Up he climbed, his eyes scanning the ground, until he spotted the infant, his helpless form swinging gently in the breeze. With hands gnarled from a life of labor, the shepherd gently unbound Oedipus. The king and queen of Corinth, Polybus and Merope, shared the same sorrow as Laius and Jocasta. They too were burdened by childlessness. When the shepherd returned with the foundling, bearing the strange marks upon his ankles, their hearts swelled with desperate hope. They decided to raise the child as their own, naming him Oedipus for his swollen feet. They lavished him with the love they never thought to bestow. And so, the seed of destruction was nurtured unknowingly in a distant land, its roots sinking deeper with each passing year. Oedipus grew strong, the hint of his true parentage obscured by the warmth of his adoptive family. Yet whispering doubts coiled around his heart like serpents. Rumors of his strange origins slithered through the Corinthian court. His heart heavy with questions, Oedipus sought answers from his parents, Polybus and Merope, his brow furrowed with worry. Their love for him was clear, but their answers only deepened his worry. Their reassurances felt thin, their faces holding shadows his young eyes could not yet decipher. Doubt festered, growing from a seed to a strangling vine. Driven by a relentless need for truth, Oedipus sought the oracle at Delphi. The cryptic prophecy he received shattered his tranquil existence. He would slay his father and wed his mother. Aghast and believing himself a true Corinthian prince, Oedipus fled his adopted home. He vowed to wander far enough to put such a vast distance between himself and Corinth that the monstrous prophecy could never come to fruition. Fate, however, is a hunter relentless in its pursuit. Oedipus's desperate flight led him to a crossroads, a seemingly insignificant juncture where three paths converged beneath a blistering sun. Oedipus, his journey-worn cloak slung over his shoulder, approached the junction warily. He was a wanderer now, his heart a tangle of dread and determination. But his warrior's instincts had not dulled. A disturbance broke the oppressive silence, the clatter of hooves, the creak of ornate leather, the murmur of many voices. Rounding the bend, a royal chariot came into view, its gilded wheels kicking up a choking cloud. It was drawn by magnificent steeds, their coats gleaming like polished onyx, and flanked by a retinue of guards. In the chariot, a man reclined, his robes woven with threads of arrogance and aged authority. This was Laius, though Oedipus knew it not. "Peasant!" bellowed one of the guards, his spear leveled at Oedipus. "Make way for the king of Thebes!" Oedipus, weariness forgotten, felt the prickle of anger. He had fled his home to escape a prophecy, not to bow to kings he did not know. "This road belongs to all travelers," he countered, his voice echoing etch. The chariot lurched to a halt, and Laius emerged, his bearing regal, his eyes blazing. "Insolent cur!" he spat. "Do you not recognize your rightful ruler?" The word ruler was like a spark to dry tinder. To Oedipus, it conjured images of an iron-fisted tyrant, of cruel decrees handed down from on high. He would be no man's subject, even unknowingly, to his own father. "I recognize only the laws of the gods and the respect due between men," he shot back. A dangerous silence fell, broken only by the snort of an impatient horse. Then, in a whirlwind of motion, Laius struck Oedipus across the face with his staff. The pain was sharp, but the insult far worse. Oedipus, young and quick with the wrath of the wounded, drew his sword. The confrontation escalated in a heartbeat, shouts filling the air, steel clanging on steel. It was a violent blur, and in the end, Laius and his guards lay lifeless in the dust. Oedipus, left panting and wild-eyed as he stared down at the carnage. Unaware he had fulfilled the first part of the prophecy, Oedipus continued his journey. Thebes, a glittering jewel amidst the arid landscape, appeared on the horizon. The city was held in the monstrous grip of the Sphinx, a creature with a woman's head, a lion's body, and feathered wings of an eagle. She perched above the city gates, posing her deadly riddle. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 at night? Those who failed to answer correctly faced a swift and terrible death. Oedipus, his mind honed by years of study and a thirst for knowledge, approached the Sphinx undaunted. Her riddle sparked a flicker of recognition, and with a clarity born of desperation, he responded, "Man, for as a babe he crawls, as an adult he walks upright, and in old age he leans upon a staff." The Sphinx, her cruel purpose thwarted, shrieked in fury and cast herself from the heights, shattering upon the rocks below. Thebes erupted in jubilation. Their savior had arrived. The vacant throne was his, and the widowed Queen Jocasta, still radiant despite the shadow of grief, became his bride. Thus the prophecy twisted its insidious thread to completion, its architect unseen and its victims blind to the monstrous design laid before them. For years, Oedipus reigned as a just and beloved king. His marriage to Jocasta brought not only companionship but heirs, sons with proud bearing and daughters with their mother's luminous eyes. Thebes prospered, and all seemed well within the palace walls. Yet the gods are not known for their mercy, and fate's loom weaves on regardless of mortal joy. A terrible blight descended upon Thebes. Crops withered in the fields, livestock perished, and a suffocating miasma clung to the once vibrant city. The stench of death filled the air, and whispers of a curse spread among the desperate populace. Oedipus, ever the protector of his people, vowed to unravel the source of this decay, to wrest salvation from the tightening fist of disaster. Once again, the oracle was consulted, her whispers a death rattle in the hallowed chamber. Thebes, she declared, harbored a miasma far worse than any plague. The murderer of King Laius walked among them, his presence a festering wound upon the land. Oedipus, his kingly pride swelling, swore that the villain would be unmasked and justice would be served. His determination was fierce, his pronouncements echoing from the palace heights. A relentless hunt for a killer he himself did not suspect was the source of the city's ills. The prophet Tiresias, blind yet a seer of truths others could not bear to comprehend, arrived at Oedipus's summons. When questioned, his cryptic words ignited a spark of dread in the king's heart. "You are the blight," the prophet accused, his voice trembling not with fear but with the weight of the knowledge. "You, Oedipus, are both killer and kin to the man you slew." Oedipus raged against this. It was madness, some twisted trick of the jealous gods. Yet the seed of doubt, planted so long ago, began to grow with monstrous speed. Jocasta, her queenly composure fraying, recounted the death of Laius at a crossroads, killed by bandits. A memory stirred in Oedipus, a half-formed image of a chariot, a heated argument, and the fading light in an old king's eyes. Then the shepherd, the one summoned from the mountain so long ago, confirmed the most horrifying truth. The babe he spared on the slopes of Citharon was the king who now stood before him. The world shattered around Oedipus. His cries were not those of a king, but of a creature stripped of all that defined him. Jocasta, her spirit broken, retreated to her chambers, her silken girdle becoming a noose of despair. Oedipus, blinded by his own hands in a desperate attempt to blot out the unbearable truth, stumbled into an exile of his own making. His daughters, Antigone and Ismene, became his guides, their youth bearing the crushing weight of their father's sins. Oedipus's tale echoes down the ages, a haunting reminder of the complexities of the human heart and the cruel whims of the gods. Yet his downfall goes beyond a simple cautionary tale about defying prophecies. It invites us to ponder the nature of free will and the unseen forces that shape our lives. Was Oedipus truly the architect of his own ruin, or merely a pawn in a game played by invisible forces? Driven by love and a yearning for self-preservation, Oedipus sought to escape a monstrous destiny. Yet, these very actions propelled him towards his tragic end. His story offers no easy answers, leaving us with a timeless reflection on the mysteries of human existence.